Thank you. Beautiful singing today. It was really blessed my heart. I hear Rachel back there. Why do we love singing? Is there singing in heaven? Is this like a preview? What will it be like? Oh, my, it'll be amazing. So about, I think it was about 2 years ago, I was listening to Ravi Zacharias on the radio in the morning. Who knows who Ravi Zacharias is? He passed, back in May, and kind of still in. Oh, I'm kind of still in shock about that actually, because he had such an impact in our small group and me. And if you know, he was probably the foremost apologist, I would think, at least the last of his time on earth. He was the man. And an apologist is, if you think about an evangelist, they deal with issues between the individual and the relationship to God. The apologist is more like issues between the culture and Christianity. He attacks those issues, and Ravi was very gifted. And he would travel around really the world, usually at colleges, and he'd have a topic like atheism or truth or can you trust the Bible, something like that. He would speak, and then they'd have a microphone down in the middle, and a little line of brave students would get up there, and they'd ask the question, that I'm going to stump Ravi Zacharias. And I don't remember the question that particular Sunday when I heard him, but it was something like, and you've heard this, why can't truth be true for you, and I can have truth true for me, and even if they conflict, that's okay, right? That's moral relativism. And Ravi said, and he had this gift for like making you think about the question you're asking, and in the process of that, you would get your answer. Like I remember one time, this is an aside, I remember one time he was talking and probably about how Christianity gives you a coherent worldview. Everything makes sense. And this young lady got up to the microphone and she said, kind of sarcastically, "Whoever said it has to make sense?" And he paused for a second and he said, this is kind of like what the Lord would do too. He said, "Before I answer your question, I have to ask you a question. Is that okay?" "Okay, ask me a question." "When I answer your question, do you want it to make sense or not make sense?" And everybody did what you did. They laughed and she sat down. So, that's a classic postmodern point of view, that nothing has to make sense. There is no truth. There's nothing. But you can't live that way, and that's the challenge. And getting back to the other question, though, I think Ravi said something like, so let me understand this. You're saying that there's really only one truth, and that's that all truth is relative. Is that what you're saying? That's the only absolute truth there is? And then you see the contradiction. That's impossible. So then he said, there are really three kinds of truth. And he hearkened back to Thomas Aquinas, who was like 1200 AD, Catholic theologian. And Aquinas said there's three kinds of truth. There's equivocal, unequivocal, and analogical. Okay, big words. The equivocal truth is something like the Dolphins won the Super Bowl. Okay, that was true in 1973. That's the last time they did it, and I don't think they're winning this year. That's an equivocal truth. It was only true at that time, and it's only true for those people. How about an unequivocal truth? An unequivocal truth is, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. True for all people, for all time. It's unequivocal. But the third category is the one that's fascinating to me, and you know what it is, but you don't know the name of it. And he called it analogical truth, truth by analogy. How does God communicate his infinite character and nature to our finite minds? How do we grasp who he is? He does it by analogy. And what is an analogy? An analogy is one thing, usually simple, that explains a more complex thing so that you can kind of grasp it. So today I want to talk about analogical truth. And for first scripture reading, we're in Psalm 19. You're very familiar with this scripture. I think about it almost every night when we walk Max, our German shepherd, because we look up at the stars, especially if it's been really clear, the moon's out. So Psalm 19, and the heavens are declaring the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. And then the odd verse 3. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. So here we have in an Old Testament verse, analogical truth. Okay, you with me? It's an analogy. The heavens somehow are declaring to us the glory of God. So in order to explain this, I want to kind of share with you an analogy within an analogy. We live in the analogy, right? This is the analogy. We live in reality. It's an analogy. But in order to really grasp that, I'm going to share with you another analogy with the help of my prop. All right, here's my prop. Do we serve a big God? How big is he? Can we grasp it? How does he communicate to us that he is a big God? What is it? I thought I heard algae, but I'm not sure that's what. Was it algae? We'll talk later. Okay, here's one. I used to share this with my Sunday school class. He put us in a big universe. He put us in a big universe. You can't be in a big universe unless you have a big God. Now here's the analogy. See this coffee cup here? This is our solar system. Okay? Sun's at the middle. Let's see, Mercury, Venus, Earth is about here. What's next? Saturn? Jupiter? I missed Mars. Yeah. Mars. Okay, so that's the diameter of our solar system. Where's the next star compared to our coffee cup? The nearest star. Rachel. Way over there. Not even close. The next star, Alpha Proxima, anybody know what an astronomical unit is? That's the distance between the Earth Sun to the Earth, 1 AU. It's 276,000 AUs, or in light years, 4.24 light years, the distance light can travel in a year, or, based on our analogy, 2,303 feet away, which is not to the road, but like further down, a few blocks down, I'd say. That's like almost half a mile. That's the nearest star. It takes light about 8 minutes to go from the middle to here. It takes it about 13 minutes to go from here to Mars, the middle to Mars. I don't know how long it takes it to go to here. How long does it take to go there? 4.2 years at the speed of light. Here, 2,300 feet. Okay, are you getting a sense of the bigness of our universe? Okay, we sit on an arm of our Milky Way galaxy. It's a spiral, and we're like not in the center, not in the edge. We are 120,000 light years from the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. How far is that from here? What's that? A light year is the distance light travels in a year. It's 186,000 miles per second. Okay. All right. To the edge of the galaxy is about Yakima, Washington. That's not quite to Seattle. Okay. Is your mind kind of grasping it? And it takes 120,000 years for light to get there from here. Okay. And I won't even talk about when's the next galaxy. Okay? Because it's just, even with the coffee cup, it's just hopeless. So do we serve a big God? Did he do a good job with his analogy? Yeah. Here's another simple analogy. God, and I think it was in Exodus 33, Moses wants to see God's glory. God says, I can't show you my face because for a man to see my face is to die. Because we can't comprehend that. We can't withstand it. So what did he do by analogy to kind of express his glory and his holiness? He gave us that big bright thing up there, the sun. You can't even look at it. It's so bright, you'll go blind. You can't approach it. You'll be incinerated. We send probes to it, and they get pretty close, and they give their last measurements, and then they burn up. So by analogy, he gave us that sun thing up there. And we kind of get a grasp of his unapproachable holiness, what he's like. So how does God express his eternality to us? What does that mean, eternality? How can something always only be? So he gives us these lifespans, which are pretty short, and then he sets us in history, which seems really long to us. Although I think I calculated out one time how many generations it is back to Adam. It's not thousands. It's only hundreds of generations, maybe 350, 400, something, depends on how you measure a generation. But we get a sense of his eternality from our little lifespans in the passage of time. Because you're aware that God does not dwell, there is no time in the metaphysical realm. That is an aspect of the physical realm. Time only exists here. So how does an eternal being communicate to us finite, limited things? He puts us in a time frame. Another way he expresses his nature is the Trinity. The Trinity is all through nature, everywhere you look. And I'll just give you a few examples. Sun, moon, stars. Father, mother, children. Space, time, matter. Those three. So let's look at Romans 1. And this is a very good example of how the Old Testament says it in a muted tone, and the New Testament shouts it. Because Psalm 19 didn't really tell us everything about that aspects of it. But when we go to Romans chapter 1, it's very clear. And I'm going to start at verse 18, because I have to digress just for a moment. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who do what? Suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So this is nothing new. We see suppression of the truth all around us every day. This was written 2,000 years ago. And basically it boils down to one thing. Why does man suppress the truth? Because truth inevitably leads right back to God. Every aspect of truth. Is it medical, scientific, historical, political, personal? Doesn't matter what it is. If it's true, it leads back to God. If it's false, it leads back to the enemy, Satan. He's the father of lies. But if it's true, it always leads back to God. So they have to suppress it. And I just want to rattle off a short list. We could spend a lot of time. Abortion takes the life of an unborn child. It is not women's reproductive health services. In academia, physical violence is used to suppress ideas that they disagree with. The going philosophy right now is that if you express an idea I don't like, I feel threatened by that, and I can use physical violence to stop you from saying that. Ask Ben Shapiro. He can't speak at a college campus in this country because they will riot and attack him. In the political realm, words are redefined to hide the truth of what they really mean. And we see that constantly. Evolution. Any evidence that undermines evolution is suppressed. Big tech suppresses information that is negative to the candidate they support. And they suppress information that is positive to the candidate they don't like. Socialism. We have a party that's preaching socialism. One party pushes for a socialist future while suppressing the truth about what it actually is. Touting socialism is a proven way for a ruling elite to achieve wealth and power they could never achieve in a capitalist system. All they have to do is convince enough people it is all about sharing and caring and eventually suppressing the truth of what the outcome always is. Even our Constitution. What is the number one thing about our Constitution that makes it incredibly different from every other Constitution on the earth? That our rights come from God. That is revolutionary. And they want to suppress that truth. So the Constitution becomes this well-guarded tourist attraction in the National Archives, and they only bring it out when they need it. The other incredible thing is that they rule with the consent of the governed, us. We give them permission to rule over us, and they don't like us knowing that. Let me attack gun control. Gun control suppresses the truth, and more lives are saved by guns than taken by guns. God gives every person the right to defend his own life and that of their loved ones. That is a God-given right. And don't get me started on COVID. So, unrighteous men suppress the truth. As believers, what is our response and responsibility to the truth? Embrace it, face it, spread it, proclaim it, live it. Proverbs says, buy truth and do not sell it. Get wisdom and instruction and knowledge. What a difference. All right, picking up at verse 19 in Romans 1, it says, because that which is known about God is evident within them. For God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood analogically through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. Have you ever met an atheist? Keep in mind this, it's inexcusable. Now, this is all like, okay, analogical truth. Does it really matter? How does it affect us in the way that we live day to day? Or is it just, oh, I kind of, yeah, the universe is big, so our God is big. Got it. Does it really matter? Is it important? What has it changed for us? I was talking to Casey earlier, and I think there's a misconception that progress, however you want to define it, longer lifespans, better health care, higher standard of living, that progress is inevitable with the passage of time. However, if you go to New Guinea, or you go to the Amazon, or a lot of places on this earth, you have people groups who are basically living in the Stone Age. A lot of progress has been, a lot of time has passed, but they're still in the Stone Age. Why is that? And it's because of a rejection, I think, of analogical truth. They are spiritist, animist, shamanism type of culture. And if you remember a few years back when Casey's dad was here, he described what life is like in a non-analogical framework, put it that way, where rocks, trees, rivers, mountains, locations are inhabited by spirits. And most of your time and energy is spent in either pleasing the spirits, manipulating the spirits, or living in fear of the spirits because of what they do to you. And they had lots of very strange cultural traditions that they had to abide by in order to please the spirit world. Now, we believe that there is a physical realm created by God and a metaphysical realm that is completely separate. In this view, the spirit realm and the physical realm are one and the same. They all are the same. You see it a lot in the environmental movement today. Ever heard of Gaia, the idea that the earth is a living thing? I mean, it's inhabited by living things, but the earth itself is not a spirit. And it shapes what they believe. How will you learn metallurgy if there's a spirit in a rock? You'll be afraid to do anything to that rock. You'll offend a spirit, possibly. The Christian worldview, the analogical worldview, is that everything God created was to express his creative nature, his divine attributes, his eternal power, and he is pleased when we learn and investigate those things. And as a consequence of that worldview, progress is made as we uncover his design in everything that he's done. When you reject that, you're doomed. You're stuck in the Stone Age. There's kind of a flip side to it too, actually. Scientific rationalism, the idea that there is no metaphysical realm, limits you to saying that the metaphysical realm does not exist because I can't see it with a telescope, I can't measure it with an instrument. Remember Ghostbusters? What was that stuff called? Ectoplasm. They had a machine that could vacuum up ectoplasm. Okay, the spirit realm is impervious to magnetism, light, gravity. There is no force in the physical realm that can do anything to the spirit realm. Okay, I'm just saying. And there's also within scientific rationalism this idea that somehow Christianity and science are in conflict. But didn't we just get done saying basically that it's the Christian worldview that enables science? It's the foundation of science. Without a Christian worldview, you don't have science. You have spiritism. That's all that's left. You don't have a coherent explanation of mathematics and physics to understand that there's a rational mind behind all that stuff. I used to have a t-shirt, I couldn't find it. It said, in the beginning, God, and then it has Maxwell's equations. You know who Robert Clark Maxwell was. And there was light, because he was the first man that really mathematically described what light is. It behaves mathematically. You can predict it. Couldn't design a lens without that knowledge. Let me give you a list of scientists real quick. Robert Boyle said that a deeper understanding, he was 1627 to 1691, said that a deeper understanding of science was a higher glorification of God. He defined elements, compounds, and mixtures, discovered the first gas law, Boyle's law. James Clerk Maxwell, who we just talked about, an evangelical Protestant who learned the Bible by heart at age 14. And he transformed our understanding of nature. His famous equations unified the forces of electricity and magnetism, indicating that light is an electromagnetic wave. Isaac Newton, passionate dissenting Protestant who spent more time on Bible study than math and physics. Carl Friedrich Gauss, 1777 to 1855, a Lutheran Protestant who believed science revealed the immortal human soul and that there is complete unity between God and science. George Washington Carver, a Protestant evangelist and Bible class teacher whose faith in Jesus was the mechanism through which he carried out his scientific work. I could go on. I think that children, who has little ones that ask why? Constantly. Have they ever asked why the sky is blue? How about why the grass is green? Have they asked where babies come from? The dreaded question. I think children have that innate sense that there is an ultimate behind everything. There's an ultimate, which is God. And so they want to understand things analogically. It's almost instinctive. I think God planted that in us. There's an analogical answer to all those questions. I'm not sure about why the grass is green, but I think I could come up with one. That's green and life, you know. It's everywhere. But what happens is the truth suppressors get a hold of us in school. And they pretty much beat that out of us. And they don't want us to think analogically. In fact, I'm questioning whether they want us to think at all. They really want us to conform and to either be part of the system or subservient to the system. That's pretty much the world system, not God's system. Now, for adults, how deep does the analogy go? And this is the conclusion. How deep does it go? Does it only relate to the physical realm? Or, let's see, how many times when you were a little kid did you look up at the clouds and the sun was shining and there was that beam of light come down and you said, it looks just like heaven? I've done it. Anybody? Why is that? Why is it that God gave us that beautiful view to cause our minds to think about the beyond? He did it on purpose. He did it because he's communicating to us. Let me ask you to think about, since this is the Lord's Supper, Christ's work by analogy. Christ's work on the cross for us. Is there a financial aspect to it? We all have finances. Have you ever been in debt? Have you ever had a debt you couldn't pay? Have you ever had a debt so big you never have a hope of paying? Yes, you have. And who paid it? The Lord did. There's a financial analogy. Why is it that we have finances? Why is it that we have money? Is it so that God can communicate to us our debt? There's a moral aspect to it. The atonement. The atonement is the satisfaction of a penalty for sin. Is it that the atonement is an analogical truth that God is using to communicate to us? How about legal? What does it mean to be justified? Have you ever gotten out of a speeding ticket or been to a court and tried and found innocent or declared innocent? Why is it we have a legal system? Why is it that that ties in so directly with what Christ has done for us in relieving us of the penalty of our sin and God declaring us justified? Is it analogical? Is it just coincidence? Did it just evolve? Or did God design it that way? How about relational? We have relationships. Why is it we have relationships? When you look in the Trinity, and it's God is a relational being. He has three parts and they all relate to each other. We relate to each other. We are relational, not because it was evolved. We don't even believe in that. It's because God is relational. So by analogy, he communicates to us in a very shallow way what it really feels like to be in a relationship. Now, even our own state. What does it mean to be lost? On the canoe trip, there was a young man that was lost. And I immediately thought, lost. That's a geographical concept. It means you don't know where you're at. Well, it's an analogy to being lost spiritually. You are not where you need to be. And by analogy, we all understand what it means to be lost. And when you realize you're lost, you want to find where you need to be. And that's a Savior. How about biologically? Is there a biological analogy to our current state? What does it mean to be blind? The scripture says we're blind. Well, we know what that. Why do we have vision in the first place? Why can't we just sense things like some blind animals do? They just sense things. They don't need vision. God gave us vision so that we can understand what it means to be blind. And when you understand what it means to be blind, you realize, I don't know what the truth is. I don't see it. I just don't get it. I'm blind. And when you realize you're blind, he can fix you and give you your sight, your spiritual sight. So I hope that this concept of analogical, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just a label for something I think we live in all the time. But when Ravi Zacharias said those words, it was like something clicked. And it opened up a new way of viewing things that I thought were just I don't know why they're like that. Why do we have beautiful gleaming cities? Is it because there's beautiful gleaming city in heaven? Why do we have beauty at all? Is it because there's beauty in heaven? I mean, all those things suddenly kind of made sense for the first time. And I'll finish with 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I'll know fully.